Crenshaw says someone tampered with that wound after he last saw Kennedy's body, making it larger to resemble a bullet exit wound.
Look, this is the size of the tracheostomy tube. Incision was made and then placed in. This large part, this flange, stays outside.
So it was a small wound, about the size of the instrument that you
Right.
saw.
An inch to an inch and a half, maximum. This wound, and described in the Warren Commission, was almost 3 inches wide.
Double the size. Then.
Double.
Is it possible that the doctor working to put this in, what may have been already a bullet wound, made the incision too large?
Oh, no. No, Perry was an artist with a blade. He was one of the best trained technical surgeons.
But it seems almost incomprehensible that a team of highly intelligent, highly trained doctors could be standing over the President of the United States and see wounds that you say came from the front, and yet the official government story is it came from the back, and wait this long to break the silence.
Intimidation, fear.
The location of the head wound is key evidence. Since a bullet almost always makes a small wound when it enters and a large wound when it exits, a big wound at the back of JFK's head would indicate a shot from the front, and more than one shooter. Most of the doctors and nurses who treated the president at Parkland did see a large wound at the rear of the head. Dr. Robert McClelland.
It was in the right back part of the head, very large.
Nurse Audrey Bell.
No, there was a massive wound at the back of his head.
Dr. Charles Carrico.
There was a large, quite a large defect about here on his skull.
Dr. Ronald Jones.
Well, my impression was that there was a wound in this area of the head, right in this area.
But 6 of the Dallas doctors testified they saw a part of the brain called the cerebellum protruding from the president's head wound. The cerebellum is located at the extreme back of the head.
And a portion of the cerebellum fell out onto the table as we were doing the tracheostomy.
It did.
Mm-hmm.
So the wound was very far back here.
Right. That's one of my more vivid memories, I would say, of the whole thing. That was particularly grim to see that portion of the brain ooze out of the wound as I sat there looking at it, stood there looking at it. So that stays with you pretty much.
But now, some of the Dallas doctors, like Marion Jenkins, are changing their stories. As late as 1977, Jenkins was saying he had seen the cerebellum protruding from JFK's head wound, meaning the wound was far to the rear. But recently, Jenkins had his first look at the official photos and x-rays.
Well, after looking at photographs, some made from this angle, looking down at the top of the head, it did look like cerebellum. It still looks like it, but it's obviously not. I'm not trying to defend it. I've made an error, and I've been, but I say I make errors. I call my kids with the wrong names.
The Dallas doctors' recollections about an exit wound in the back of the president's head are confirmed by witnesses at the Bethesda Hospital autopsy.
I mean, a big gaping hole in the back of the head.
Floyd Reeby, a photographer on duty, talked with Wayne Friedman.
So it's like somebody put a piece of dynamite in a tin can and light it off. There was nothing there.
Open area all the way across into the rear of the brain like that.
From the top of the head almost back to near the base of the skull. You could see where that part was gone.
So eyewitnesses in Dallas and Bethesda describe a wound extending all the way to the back of the head. But official autopsy photos and x-rays move the wound all the way to the front of the head. The photos show the back of the head with hair and scalp intact. No large wound. The x-rays show a large wound extending to the forehead.
Certainly I can tell you that the wound was not here. There was no damage to the face that was visible.
What about the official photos and x-rays? We showed them to the 3 eyewitnesses to JFK's autopsy. Photos and x-rays not available to the public since the assassination, but recently obtained by the press. Gerald Custer took the x-rays that night.
Is this
the x-ray picture that you took, and is this the wound that you saw on the president?
This area here was gone.
Not this area.
Not this area.
Floyd Reeby assisted with the autopsy photos.
The two pictures that I've seen that you showed me that are supposedly from the archives are not what I saw that night. And I don't know where those pictures came from.
The back of the head looked like that? What did the back of the head look like?
It had a big hole in it. This whole area was gone.
Does that look like what you saw?
No, it doesn't look like what I saw. This would be a lesser of a wound than what I saw. I saw a lot worse wound that extended way back into this area here.
Was the president's hair and scalp like that?
No.
What was it like?
This part of the head was gone. There was no scalp there.
Are you telling me that this is not?
I don't believe so.
You don't think this is an
No.
honest-to-God
No.
autopsy photo?
No, I don't.
What do you think it is?
I don't know.
It's being phonied someplace. It's make-believe.
To me, it's rather obvious that the president had been struck before Governor Conley was wounded, because the president was placing his hand up to his throat. And at that time, the governor was showing no signs of any distress that he had been struck in any way. It was just a few frames later that he obviously had been wounded and showed signs that he was in pain.
The commission claimed that Governor Conley had simply suffered a delayed reaction to his wounds. Dr. Robert Shaw was the attending surgeon at Parkland Hospital who operated on the governor.
I would disagree, because I don't think that there would be a delayed action to a wound that was as massive as the wound he received of his chest. And I'm also influenced by what Nellie Conley said. She said that her husband was struck and reared up like a wounded animal before she heard the bullet. Heard the shot that had been fired. So this would indicate that his reaction was almost immediate. This bullet is too pristine for a bullet that had shattered a rib and also badly shattered the radius, which is a good, strong bone. I am sure that the bullet that inflicted these wounds on Governor Conley was fragmented much more than this bullet shows.
This is the bullet. Could it look like this after it went through Kennedy's neck and then struck the governor? The surgeon who operated on Governor Connolly's chest wounds at Parkland Hospital was Dr. Robert Shaw.
The bullet struck lateral to the shoulder blade, stripped out approximately 10 centimeters of the fifth rib, driving fragments of the rib into his chest, went on and struck the radius bone of his lower arm at this point, and a small fragment of bullet entered the inner aspect of the lower left thigh. I have never seen a bullet that had caused as much bony damage as you found in the case of Governor Connolly remain as a pristine bullet.
But looking at the wounds, Dr. Shaw disagrees.
I couldn't quite understand why a bullet going through the president's neck, coming from the right and above, exiting out through his throat, would then zig and zag to strike the governor, who was sitting directly in front of the president. It would seem to me that that bullet would have struck the governor in the left side of his chest rather than the right side of his chest.
It looked small and round, like an entry wound, instead of larger, like an exit wound could often look.
Had surgery been done in Dallas?
No, there was no surgery done on the president's head. The president was only treated in the trauma room, in the emergency room.
I could see the president's head wound quite well, and I was probably looking into a wound that was on the lateral or the side part of the head and the back part of the head.
It would be this portion of the head right here.
As I remember, it's like this.
President Kennedy's body is following on another plane. President Kennedy's body is following on another plane. President Kennedy's body is following on another plane.
Mrs. John F. Kennedy left the hospital at approximately the same time the coffin carrying the body of her husband left. The coffin went to a private air installation at Dallas's Love Field. It either has left or will leave Dallas Love Field in a matter of minutes. We are told that the gunshot wound, the fatal wound inflicted on the President of the United States, entered at the base of the throat and came out at the base of the neck on the back side.
They said that the brain wound in the president's head involved a great loss of blood and a great loss of brain tissue. The brain wound was in the back of his head, slightly to the right, which, Frank, would fit with the picture I gave you earlier of the president being having his back to the assailant. If this hypothesis that the assailant was in the building I described is true, but this conflicts with the fact that the wound in the neck, the doctors say, was in the front of the neck, just below the Adam's apple. Now, it could have been that there were two bullets. One struck him as he faced the assailant, the other as the car turned the corner, or perhaps one bullet just struck him from the front in the neck and then went up his brain. In any case, the president never regained consciousness.
And the best we can make out now, the president's motorcade had really traveled perhaps a few yards beyond this point, and that the fatal shots that were fired from behind and struck him in the back of the head, and then incongruously, some way, another bullet struck him in the front of the neck.
One reporter, Frank, who was traveling in the motorcade, says it's his guess that the assassin had about a 45-degree angle on the president, so that it was not head-on or directly from the rear, but on the side.
The Secret Service agents normally walk directly beside the car on either side. We do not see any in this photograph, but usually 2 or 3 Secret Service agents will walk on either side of the car so that they are there to spot anyone who looks like a troublemaker.
I know it's been quite a shock to all.
Well, actually, we have gotten little official word from the White House. We got the announcement something like a half an hour ago that the president was dead. There has still been no official words from the doctors who were in attendance. It's known, of course, that the president was killed by one shot that struck him in the right temple. I can recap briefly.
First reports said that President Kennedy was shot from an overpass. Our WFAA TV reporter, Mal Couch, saw the gun emerge from the upper story of the warehouse, which has turned out to be the second floor of the Texas Book Depository, which is a familiar sign.
Bob, go ahead.
May report this bulletin that a Secret Service agent and a Dallas policeman were shot and killed here today. They were shot some distance from the area where President Kennedy was assassinated. No other information immediately available from there, except one more point here that this Secret Service Lieutenant Eric Kaminsky has said the assassin's weapon appears to have been a high-powered Army or Japanese rifle of .25 caliber. The entire building where the sniper was located was evacuated. If we could get a picture of our map here and show somewhere of the building, it's a Texas school book depository, which means exactly what it says.
This is the car where the president was. This is what we call our triple underpass in Dallas. This is the grassy area and it was originally thought that the shots came from in here, and now it's believed that the shots came from this building here. We have a film.
But the president's car was some 50 feet still yet. In front of us coming towards us, and we heard the first shot, and the president, I don't know who was hit first, but the president jumped up in his seat and I thought it scared him. I thought it was a firecracker because he looked, fear. And then as the car got directly in front of us, well, a gunshot apparently from behind us hit the president in the side of the temple.
Do you think the first gunshot came from behind you too?
I think it came from the same location. Apparently back up on the mall. I don't know what you call it.
For the benefit of nomenclature, all of you folks have gone out under the viaduct, and as you turn, going under the viaduct on the left-hand side, there's some grass. Do you think the shot came from up on top of the viaduct toward the president? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Not on the viaduct itself, but up on top of the hill, a little mound of ground there, the garden.
How far away would you say that is from where the president was? A couple of 300 yards, something like that?
Well, I have no idea because I didn't see where the gunshot come from. We were looking directly at the president when he was hit, and he was more or less directly in front of us, and we didn't realize what happened until we seen the side of his head whenever the bullet hit him in the head.
Did you see the blood coming from the president's head?
Yes, sir. We seen that. I seen that. I don't know if my wife did. I seen that.
Oh, yes, sir. It was awful.
It is awful.
President Kennedy, we are now informed, was shot in the right temple. It was a simple matter of a bullet right through the head, said Dr. George Berkeley, the White House medical officer.
We know that Mr. Kennedy was hit in the right temple.
The doctors who were in attendance, it's known, of course, that the president was killed by one shot that struck him in the right temple.
Approximately 12:35 today, and from our eyewitness that you saw earlier, was shot from up in here. This is an overpass going over these streets. We call it our triple underpass because there's another one. Was shot from here. This is the car where the president was. This is what we call our triple underpass in Dallas. This is the grassy area and it was originally thought that the shots came from in here.
At first it was thought that the assassin's bullet might have been fired from one of those walkways or railroad trestles.
And then as the car got directly in front of us, well, a gunshot apparently from behind us hit the president in the side of the temple.
Do you think the first gunshot came from behind you too?
I think it came from the same location. Apparently back up on the mall. I don't know what you call it.
For the benefit of nomenclature, all of you folks have gone out under the viaduct, and as you turn, going under the viaduct on the left-hand side, there's some grass. Do you think the shot came from up on top of the viaduct toward the president? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Not on the viaduct itself, but up on top of the hill, a little mound of ground there, the garden.
Details, we go to newsman Tom Whalen at WBAP-TV, Fort Worth.
Hang on. This is Tom Whalen in Fort Worth. WBAP newsman James Darnell in Dallas on the scene of the presidential shooting, the shooting in which President Kennedy and Governor Connally were shot, has an eyewitness interview with a Mrs. Jean Hill. Here is the interview.
What is your name, ma'am?
Jean Hill.
From Dallas?
That's right.
And did you see the shooting, miss?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe what happened?
Yes, sir.
Will you do that now?
They were driving along, and we were the only people in this area on our side, and the shots came from directly across the street from us. And just as the president's car became directly even with us, we took one look at him, and he was sitting there, and about that time, 2 shots rang out just as he looked up. Just as the president looked up, and these 2 shots rang out, and he grabbed his chest, and it looked like he was in pain, and he fell over in the seat, and Jackie fell over on him and said, "My God, he's been shot." And after that, more shots rang out, and the car sped away.
Now, what kind of car was that?
What kind of a car was it? The president's
Well, I
car.
mean, where did the shots come from?
The shots came from the hill.
From the hill?
Yes. It was just east of the underpass.
And
We were on the south side.
did you look up there where the shots came from, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Could you see anyone?
I thought I saw this man running, but I looked at the president, and for a while, and I looked up there, and I thought I saw a man running, and so right after that, I guess I didn't have any better sense. I started running up there too.
And what is your name?
Jean Hill.
He died of a gunshot wound in the brain. Dr. Berkeley told me it's a simple matter, Tom, of a bullet right through the
Is this the exact spot you were standing on November 22nd, Mr. Holland?
That's correct. This is the exact spot that I was standing November the 22nd, waiting for the parade.
And where did you hear that third shot come from?
Right over about 20 or 30 feet from the other end of that little picket fence.
And where was the smoke that you saw?
It drifted right out underneath those green trees, those two trees.
From behind the fence?
From behind the fence. It kind of hung there just like for a few seconds, long enough that you could see that it was
and then what
puff of smoke.
And then what'd you do?
Immediately after the president's car came underneath this overpass, four of us broke a run around this fence to find out if we could see anybody leaving the area.
Can we walk this way now that you went on the 22nd?
No, we can walk that way right now.
Fine.
We were trying to see what we could see, and
this was the direction you walked on the 22nd.
This was the direction. Made this right turn. Jumped this steam line, this pipe. One man right behind me jumped, and another one jumped right on top of him.
Fell on top of him?
Fell on top of him.
And were there more cars here on the 22nd than there are today?
They were bumper to bumper. Just a sea of cars. You couldn't hardly get through them. We were jumping over the bumpers, over the hood of the cars to work our way to the spot that we saw the smoke and heard the shot. Then we came up to the wooden fence.
Mr. Holland, did you remain behind here for a while when the police officers were searching the area?
Approximately 15 minutes before I had to go back to my office. There was about 40 or 50 people around here searching.
And what did you find here?
A lot of footprints behind this car, mud on the bumpers. And I looked around to see if I could find some empty shells or any evidence of a shot being fired and the bullet shell rejected from the gun. And this is where I saw the smoke from the third shot.
Right drifting out around here?
Just drifting out underneath these trees.
Where were you on November 22nd, Mr. Dodd?
I was standing on the underpass, Commerce Underpass in Dallas, Texas.
Were you there alone?
No, I was along with three friends of mine.
Railroad men?
Yeah, all railroad men.
Mr. Holland was one of them.
That's right.
And did you see anything which might indicate to you where the shots came from?
Well, we all four seen about the same thing as the shot. The smoke came from behind the hedge on the north side of the plaza, and a motorcycle policeman dropped his motorcycle in the street with his gun in his hand and run up the embankment to the hedge. And then I went north to look around the corner to see if there's anyone behind the hedge, and met Special Agent of the Katy Railroad, and he went down there, and I walked along with him to see if there were any tracks there, in which there were tracks, and cigarettes butts were laying where someone had been standing on the bumper, looking over the fence or something.
Were you questioned by agents of any government agency on November 22nd, Mr. Dodd?
Yes, we were. We were taken over to the courthouse and questioned by, I suppose, Secret Service men of some kind. And they asked me quite a few questions, about the same as I've told you men here today.
But you were never called as a witness by the warrant?
No, I never was called.
Because here's the Warren report, and in the index your name is not listed, and there's no reference in the whole 888 pages to the fact that you were up there and you saw what you saw, you heard what you heard.
Well, I don't know about that. But there was something that looks to me like that going on there that somebody should have found out something. A man walk up and shoot a man handcuffed to a couple of policemen and get away with it. Why, I figured there's something else that's going on besides what it should be.
And it sounded like it came from the left and in front of us, towards the wooden fence. And there was a puff of smoke that came underneath the trees on the embankment.
Where was the puff of smoke, Mr. Simmons, in relation to the wooden fence?
It was right directly in front of the wooden fence.
The trend of the clearing, whether it is clearing or not, yes.
Doctor, did you know the president is dead?
We didn't mention the president to Governor Connolly. No.
He has out of surgery at the present time and resting in his room, is that correct?
No. They are now taking care of the compound fracture of the right radius. As soon as that is finished, he will be taken to the recovery room where he will be carefully watched until he has regained all of his vital signs. Now, his vital signs are good now, but we like to observe them for a period of time. This is a routine measure until blood pressure is stable, respirations are satisfactory, and until the governor is fully recovered from the anesthesia. In other words, he's fully conscious, responding rationally to questions. This is being taken care of. The bullet is in the leg. It hasn't been removed. This is a very insignificant factor, though. It will be removed. Left eye, but there's no significant injury to the left eye. Before he goes to the recovery room. His vital signs are good now, but we like to observe them for a period of time. This is a routine measure until blood pressure is stable, respirations are satisfactory, and until the governor is fully recovered from the anesthesia. In other words, he's fully conscious, responding rationally to questions.
They're asking now if a bullet was found in his leg.
The bullet is in the leg. It hasn't been removed. This is a very insignificant factor, though. It will be removed. Left eye, but there's no significant injury to the left eye. Before he goes to the recovery room.
It was asked, when will it be removed? They're now asking, will he stay at this hospital?